Welcome to Jackie's Linear Corner. Hi, I am Jackie, and it's time for a review. I just filmed my review of The Last Unicorn, which I listened to an audiobook. So now I'm going to do a review of the first book in the Six Tudor Queens by Alison Weir, not the Philip Gregory ones, which I have read years ago. I read The Constant Princess, and I meant to read The Other Bowling Girl, but I never got around to it, but I did see the movie adaptation on that one. And when I decided to come back to this period in history, I decided I wanted to check out a different author, as I've told you guys in the past. And I love this book. This was so good, but there's also a tragedy to this, because I know the history. I know what's going to happen to Katherine, and I know how things are going to work for her, and it's going to be I knew it was going to be a very bittersweet ending for her. And it's so sad because in the beginning there was so much hope, and she had so much vitality and so much excitement. And despite being betrothed to Arthur, and then that being cut short because Arthur was sick, and I think, and according to Alison Weir, she found out that he had tuberculosis at the time. That's why he died. And it's, to marrying his younger brother, and there was so much love between them, so much passion. They had such a beautiful relationship in the beginning, those first few years of their marriage. They were so happy together. But there were glimmers of moments where if she criticized and questioned his judgment then he would lose his temper. Which, that's why throughout the book, when she's like saying that, oh, it's all Wolsey's fault, or it's all Anne's fault, I kept thinking, well, I'm not sure if I believe that, because I think Henry can make up his own mind and has his temper. I think he just could easily be influenced by others. I mean, I still think that, and I'm not an expert. I'm still kind of learning and getting into this time period, back into this time period. I mean, even before, it's not like I was hardcore into it. I was just I was like a lot of female, young women who, because let's face it, this is often a time in history that there are a lot of women that get into reading about this time period. But so I'm not an expert. I've watched some documentaries. So I'm just but the impression I get of Henry from documentaries and reading this book is that he's very capable of losing his temper and being passionate about things and being stubborn about what she kept calling her obstinate whenever she was still not given to his what happened later. And so to me, I feel like he was very capable, and it wasn't just the decision, it wasn't just the influence of people like Wolsey or Anne that corrupted. I think he was very capable. Plus, we know, of course, historically, he needed a male heir, and she was not giving it to him. So I'm just thinking, why do you keep insisting that, oh, get rid of Anne, then things will go back to normal? Because I seriously doubted it. That even if Anne was gone, yeah, he might begrudgingly take her back, but things will never be the same between them. Because he would still resent her and be bitter that she wasn't giving him a male heir. And there might have been pressure from, his people, for the sake of argument, his parliament. I mean, that's probably not his council. Council is probably a better word. His council, I mean, there might have been pressure in the people of England that, okay, you need to have a male heir. And if he didn't have a male heir, his family and legacy would die. And they really, literally believed that women were not capable of running the kingdom. And of course, I did learn that there was, they mentioned Matilda, who tried to be queen. And I think there were other queens like Eleanor of Aquitaine. I can't think of who else they talked about in those documentaries I watched. But she went. And according to, they were like, oh, she went crazy. She couldn't handle it. Like, in their mind, it was because she was a woman. So it just proves that women can't rule the kingdom. And I'm just thinking the whole time, men have made the same mistakes. Men have gone crazy and obsessive too. And that's what happens to Henry. He becomes obsessed with Anne and determined to get her. So, and also she's young and beautiful, has a lot of vitality. She could give him an heir while Catherine was aging, and she was soon losing her ability to have, give him children. And it's, it's so tragic because Catherine was a good queen. She cared about the people. She fought for the people, and the people loved her. They adored her. But because everyone was at the mercy of King Henry, and when he fell in love with Anne, because she was smart, she was clever. Um, which I literally just bought the next book, the book about Anne Boleyn, the king's obsession. So I'm gonna get her perspective, which will be interesting. Like, especially since I did not read the other Boleyn girl, I only saw the movie adaptation. So it'll be very intriguing to get her. I mean, I'm wondering if they're going to go from when she first arrived at court and we're going to see her perspective. Like in the show The Tudors, you see her frustration and you almost kind of feel sorry for her in The Tudors. Like, her fear and her determination. Being in a world where women didn't get a lot of power, and how they would fight tooth and claw to keep that power. And of course, Anne and Catherine are very different women. Like Anne is probably more of a pragmatist, while I don't know what the opposite of a pragmatist would be, but Catherine was the opposite of that. She was just a good moral person who would stick to her principles. And I feel like I admire her for sticking to her guns the whole time, like never giving in, even though she was being threatened constantly. And when she was exiled and saying, you don't, constantly being told that she was in the wrong. And she kept on insisting, despite, she still insisted that she was a virgin when she married Henry. And, that their marriage her marriage to other was not constant. And I just was so frustrated because it was like, why won't that Henry was just being stubborn himself. He kept calling her stubborn, but to me, he was the stubborn one because he was the one that he was just looking for an excuse to get rid of her, right? Because she was not giving him what he wanted, and you knew there was pressure on him to produce a male heir. And he was young and impulsive and an angry little punk. And of course, he's used to getting what he wants. And of course, Wolsey never truly was able to give him what he wants. And he's not, of course, if your history, he's not entirely wrong about the church. But he, saying that the church is corrupt. But he's not innocent. But, he's a king. The word is his law. And it kind of makes him a little bit a hypocrite. Because it's like this coming from, this guy's calling out the church for being corrupt, yet you have a guy who's willing to will chop off your head or a finger if you don't give him his way. And he kept basically, I definitely think what they do to Catherine, where they kept sending her to different places and didn't care if she was sick. I was like, oh, we can't have her meet her daughter because there's, they might be plotting. And I think that's a mixture of comes from both Anne and Henry. I don't think it's just Anne, as Catherine seems to think. I think it was very much Henry becoming increasingly paranoid. His relationship with Spain was already ruined with Catherine's father, who didn't trust Henry and was withholding her dowry. And he even admits to Catherine, and I think she's caught between these two men. It's like, you feel so bad for her, because it's like, she has so little power and just has to do what she can. Luckily her dad did make her ambassador, but then she didn't obtain that power for that long, I don't think. And I don't recall. And so she's just trying to do, and of course she's loyal to Spain, but she loves Henry. She loves Henry, so she's very much caught in the middle between these two men. And then her daughter is caught in the middle eventually, and it's so frustrating because she's such a good, strong, beautiful person. All because it was very tragic for women. Obviously for women, just they had so little power and they could only hold on to power where they could. And of course, you know, it's just it's just so sad and so frustrating. And like I said, I admire her for putting up with this for so long and to continue fighting and staying true to her religious beliefs. Because her religion as a Catholic was very strong. And of course, this is right before, right around the time of the Reformation and right before, like, the whole war between Catholics and Protestants. I think that's what that started. I mean, Henry's, separating from the church would probably be the catalyst for the English Civil War that happened after Elizabeth, his daughter, which, again, the last laugh is on Henry because they were like, oh, women can't rule, but in the end, both his daughters, who he was like, you're bastards now, both of them ended up sitting on the throne. So the last laugh is on him. But anyway, but I absolutely love Katherine. She is so great, and I wished her life to end so tragically, and I wish her happiness had lasted longer. I mean, I wish this could have a fairy tale ending, but of course it doesn't, and we know how it is. I mean, that's the funny thing about reading, like, historical fiction that is about a real person, where you have to stick to, unless you're trying to unless you acknowledge that you're taking creative liberties and you're doing it on purpose to make a point, like the My Lady Jane, which is about Jane Grey, the 9-Day Queen, which I kept getting her mixed up with Jane Seymour. But that book was like, the book was exploring that story, but giving it kind of a more happy, comedic ending instead of making it the tragedy that it was, and it's doing that on purpose. For this one, of course, this is a historian writing this book, so I mean, her point is to be historically accurate as possible, taking a few liberties. There is an end note where she explains that, points that out, that she did take liberties, but she tries to be historically accurate as possible, and because I mean that's her job, she's a historian, and of course she can't give her a happy ending. And if you're doing like a story, like The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna, yes, World War II was a tragedy, but her main characters were made up, so she could give them hope, give them a happy ending. And it's just like, I had just read Pompeii by what is this? By now I can't remember. But anyway, in that book, the author was able to give those characters a happy ending despite the tragedy of this event, because they're not real. They're not real people as far as we know. I mean, they had real historical figures in that book, like Pliny was a real person. Now, I don't know if any of the other characters were, but I think the other characters were made up. The main one, our main guy, I think, and his love interest, I think, were made up. I would have to double check on that, but so you can give them a happy ending despite the situation. They don't have to die like everyone else in Pompeii did. But this is a real person. These are real people. You can take a few liberties here and there, but all these people are real, so their ending in real life has to happen the way it does in history, unless you acknowledge that you're making a point not to, you want to give them a happy ending instead of a tragic ending. Um, it's also interesting because another thing, a little off topic here, but it's always interesting because because the first, I've not read Utopia, but the first I heard about it was in Ever After, when it's Daniel's favorite book because it was the last book her father brought home before he died. He had his heart attack. So she's able to quote. So I always hear, and they reference that quote is said in here, the quote from Utopia, which is, I can't remember it. I cannot remember, and I don't want to waste time trying to find it, but it's the quote about, you can't make thieves and then punish them. Like, they're these people, they are only exposed to, they're exposed to a certain way of life, so they almost can't help but doing the things because they were taught those things, like doing bad things because it's what they were taught. It's kind of refers to the nature versus nurture debate, I feel like, that quote. And they reference the quote in this book because Thomas More is in the story, because he knew Henry VIII and Catherine. He was friends with them, And it makes it, that is another tragic story. What happened to him. And actually, because I've seen The Tudors, I've been watching that show, so when I read this, I picture them as the characters. And, of course, in that show, Katherine is cast not as a redhead, but she has dark brown hair. And she, of course, is described as a redhead. And I think that's historically accurate, because, people complain about how, roll their eyes at, oh, of course she's cast as a brunette in the, other adaptations. And I do believe in the Spanish Princess, which is, I think, the show about her. She's a redhead. I think it was one of those historians react to, on-screen versions of Henry VIII, and the historian brought up the fact that actually Catherine is a redhead, and that often people don't cast her in that as a redhead, but that the Spanish Princess, she was actually a redhead in that show, which I do want to watch now that I read the book. But although I still feel like, looking at this cover, she does not look like she's Spanish. But then maybe that's me being ignorant. Because maybe this is, I would need to look at other people that are from her part of Spain. If they can have that kind of look, because I don't know, this woman does not, like I said, this is me being ignorant, but to me she looks like she's from, Ireland or Scotland or somewhere, or England, from England. But anyway, like I said, I don't know, maybe they can be this skin tone. I need to double check. But anyway, so this was a beautiful story, a beautiful start to the series. I already have book 2 coming in the mail because I got off the books, because so I'll be jumping in it, and I'm not gonna make the same mistake I did with the other Bowling Girl, where I never got around to reading it. Like, I started it, but then I put it down and I never picked it back up again. And then eventually, when we moved here, I did donate it. And it was the movie tie-in edition cover, so it wasn't a pretty cover anyway. It was just a cheap movie poster cover. But anyway, although I don't mind those all the time. Sometimes those can be really nice covers, especially if I like the look of the actress, or like if the movie poster gets a little more creative. But anyway, so that is Katherine Aragon, the true queen. The next book is Anne Boleyn, A King's Obsession. So, as I said, it'll be interesting to get her point of view of things. And I hope you guys enjoyed this review. And if you've read the series, if you don't like it, please don't tell me, because I want to keep going with the series. I don't want to be influenced. But if you didn't, let me know if you've read the series. How, what you thought, well, let me rephrase that. I want to keep reading. I want to be motivated to read it. So I hate to say it, but if people say on the internet they don't like it and they hate it, are very passionate, I might be hesitant to keep going with it. Honestly, like, I try not to let booktube or Goodreads influence me, and I shouldn't read the reviews and the comments on those reviews, but I basically don't. If you hate it downright, hate the series, and thought it was terrible, thought it was inaccurate, don't want to know. But if you read it and enjoyed it, please feel free to share. And I hope you like this review and are enjoying your reading. And I will talk to y'all later. All right, bye.